The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Mandatory means you got to be there, and they were. Trey Smith in the house.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
The big news of the day, Matt, I was starting to get a little bit nervous, but Trey Smith is in the house for day one of mandatory minicamp. There's been a lot of talk back and forth. My question to you is, what did this mean that he was available and participating on day one?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure we can totally know what it means yet. I mean, there's a few things that we can probably glean from it. I mean, one for certain is that Trey Smith's a good teammate. I mean, that's what you're going to know if Trey Smith showed up, that was a big part of it. Because let's face it, I mean, the fine for him not showing up is pretty insignificant. It's only $104,000. Hey, that's a lot to me. It's a lot to most of you. It's less than 0.5% of his $23 million contract for this season. And then when you put it in the context of what does a $100,000 fine mean versus a 5-year deal, $100 million, $50 million guaranteed, something that he may be in the ballpark of, it's insignificant. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons why that Trey Smith doesn't have to be here. The fact that he is here, I mean, one, I think it obviously tells you what his attitude is. He wants to be in Kansas City. He wants to be around this team. He wants to be doing his job. Now, the other question is that, you know, even though both sides, the Chiefs and Trey Smith's camp, have gone radio silent as far as the negotiations go, and we really don't know where they are other than, you know, what we've been left with, which is that, hey, something will get done this spring. There are 3 days left in spring. But I certainly get the sense that if these two sides were miles apart, Trey Smith wouldn't be in camp. You know, remember when Chris Jones and the Chiefs were miles apart, he was not in camp. So that's at least my sense on it, is that if these two sides didn't feel that they were close to something, or that something was going to get worked out. And I mean, hey, you know what? Accepting that maybe he plays with the franchise tag might be one of those things that they just work out. But I certainly don't think that it's a good sign and shouldn't hold a cloud over anything about Trey Smith in 2025.
I certainly hope that's the way. I hope that they can work it out. They have roughly 28 days to get that done on a long-term deal. The fact that you're here is some goodwill. That can also foster maybe some new talks, right? Maybe they have been having some discussions behind the scenes, but either way, Trey Smith being there helps. And I think it helps more than just he and Juwan or he and Creed, just understanding the buy-in, I think, especially for rookie Simmons coming in. You have Kingsley Suamati making the change to guard, competing, quote-unquote, with Mr. Caliendo. I think his presence gives the O-line group its feeling of being intact, and as you said, pulling together as a unit, because come kickoff, week 1, you need your 5 best out there no matter what, and I think that's what it comes down to. Are there other things that we can take away from either internally for the players or for the coaching staff of what that means?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I thought there was a lot of things that you could kind of take away from today and maybe have some questions about, but at the same time, I think it tells you where that this team and its offensive line is, and may tell you just a little bit about the health and where everybody is as well. Pretty notable that Trey Smith's not there for OTAs, except I think he took almost maybe every single rep with the ones at right guard. And hey, this was the first look is what the Chiefs call it. So they did let some season ticket holders in and some fans in today, which is why we get to loosen up a little bit of the reporting rules. So you're going to hear some things that maybe you didn't get to hear during OTAs from us and being able to observe it. You might even hear from some season ticket holders who are going to tell you what they saw out there today. Might be some of those tweets out there. But, you know, there was a lot of rotation. But some things did not rotate. Trey Smith at right guard, one of the things that did not rotate. Creed Humphrey at center, no rotation there. But, you know, what you were able to see, and I think Kingsley took most, if not all, of the snaps at left guard as well. But with Trey Smith being back, it meant that Mike Caliendo was taking all of the snaps with at left guard with the twos. So now, those two guys being in the quote unquote competition, or at least Caliendo being your backup, if you're not feeling good about Kingsley, they're at least both getting reps at the same spot now. And it's not where Caliendo's working for Trey Smith at right guard. They're both working at left. I think I'm surprised that you and I did not take, reps at left tackle today, Ryan, because it seemed like everybody else was. Jalen Moore mixed in. Josh Simmons took probably the plurality, maybe even the majority of snaps, but I think it was probably more like the plurality. I'm not sure he took 50%. But he probably took more than anybody else. Wanya even took a few snaps over there in the final period. Wanya took a pretty good amount. From what my eyes saw, Juwan Taylor was out there for the first period of 11 on 11, and then I think Wanya took the rest of those snaps until the final period, and then Wanya went over to the left side. Ethan Driscoll took some snaps out there at both spots. So, like I said, there's a lot of rotation right now, and some of that is just, what the Chiefs do. They want guys to be ready to play. I don't think there's any doubt. Who's going to be the starter left tackle on day one? It's going to be Jalen Moore or Josh Simmons. And we're not going to decide that in minicamp. That's going to get decided in training camp, and it won't get decided until the pads come on. And that was one thing that I asked Josh Simmons today, and you can go over the Chiefs Digest. His press conference is up and you can see it there. But I asked him just, he's passed every test at this point except contact, going full speed, full contact, and how much is he looking forward to that? And he's like, hey, I've been wanting to do that since day one. He's been wanting to get out there and show and see what he can do. So, I'm still expecting there could be setbacks. We know that any player coming back from an injury might wake up one day with some inflammation or soreness, and you're just going to have to push through it to get confidence that you trust that knee. But, I don't know if any of those tests and barriers are going to come to Josh until you get to the part where the pads come on and you're playing for real. And it's not just footwork and speed, but it's power, because that's what he needs to be able to prove. And he's got that power. He's got that base to be able to use his strength, to use his reach. That's going to be a big part of it.
One thing that I did not see is somebody that looked like all of a sudden he was Mr. Skinny. There's been a lot of reports about Travis Kelce dropping 25 plus pounds. I didn't see that. How did you take in the visualness that is Travis today?
Yeah, we were pretty far distance most of the time. The one bit of video I was able to get from the tight ends, I had to shoot through the wide receivers and past the quarterbacks. So it looks maybe a little bit like it was smuggled out of Arrowhead, but so you can maybe judge for yourself when you get to see Travis. I thought he kind of looked like Travis. Did I all of a sudden see a guy that, just looks skinny as a rail? No. But has he traded some beer calories for muscle? Maybe that's the difference. Hard to say. I've never thought that, Travis had anything that you would call fat on him. So where he was going to lose 25 pounds, I'm not entirely sure. But hey, maybe that's the case. Maybe that, just hitting the weights a little bit more this year. Maybe he's changed the diet. We're going to be talking to Travis on Wednesday afternoon. So we're going to get to find out, what his offseason plan was, where he kind of is weight wise. And, and he has kind of, varied in weight before and everything. He's as on my recollection, I think he's played as fat, as high as 265. He's played as low as I think 240. And if, and the truth might be somewhere in the middle. It could very well be that, Travis has been playing maybe closer to 265. Now he's maybe playing closer to 240. Maybe he hasn't lost 25 pounds, but, if he went from 257 to 242, maybe you can kind of round that up to 25. We'll see what Travis has to actually say about it. Exactly. Lord knows I could lose 25 pounds right now. I need to get with Travis's trainer. So we'll see. But I thought, on the field, and I feel bad for Travis because our shooting period is really short. And like mentioned online, Travis was in France on Monday for an event and arrived back in Kansas City early Tuesday morning. I mean, with that kind of jet lag, I'm surprised he was on the field at all. But he did drop the pass on the one portion where I was getting to shoot video of him. And yet, I mean, that's just because it's a short shooting period. We don't get to shoot the entire practice. We don't get to, film when there's 11 on 11 on the field. And on today, it was really, first 15, 20 minutes of stretch and individual work. And then, cameras are kicked out and phones are stopped, so you can't shoot any video. I get the one time Travis drops a pass and everybody thinks, well, that's Travis. Like I said, I mean, probably a little jet lag, but the rest of the day, he was pretty much Travis. And there was a play during the 11 on 11 session. It was the first play after they had run 7 on 7 and they'd gotten back for the last team period. And Patrick Mahomes threw a ball that I think just basically teleported through Jalen Watson and Shamari Connor into the hands of Travis Kelce, because I have no idea how it got past those two guys, other than the fact that Patrick Mahomes threw it at 70 miles an hour and Kelce just hauled it into his big soft hands. So that's, to me, looked like absolute classic Mahomes and Travis.
When you're hot, you're hot. And when you got it, you still got it. I enjoy things from France, mostly Bordeaux, but whatever we're going to call it, it is what it is. That is quite a feat. I had concerns about, is this going to be a better offseason for him overall, knowing that that's the last thing you did before showing up to mandatory? Is that a plus or a minus in your book?
Maybe just a slash. It's kind of down the middle. I mean, I don't think that we're going to get a real sense of where Travis is right now. I mean, it's going to be basically 2 days of practice, because the third day is going to be the conditioning test. They run them through the gassers, so newcomers and everything, and even the old heads around get tested just to make sure they can pass the test when they get to training camp, or know how far away they are from being able to pass the conditioning test. So it's going to be 2 days of football and then the conditioning test. We're not going to really, to me, learn a lot about where Travis is. I mean, I certainly didn't see a guy who looked like he's been laying on the sofa not doing anything. I mean, it looked like to me like a guy who has been working out a lot and catching a lot of passes, because he looked like Travis Kelce. So we'll see. I mean, once again, it's going to be a training camp time. I mean, that's when we're going to really, I think, find out for more about where Travis is. But it certainly sounds like he's trying to put himself in a position where he's just going to be, more durable and stronger than maybe he was last year.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Finally, a positive update on the Cincinnati Bengals with Trey Hendrickson, as the sides have resumed communication on Trey's contract.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
The report from Ben Baby and Jeremy Fowler over at ESPN that contains reason to actually be optimistic that something might get done here soon with Trey Hendrickson.
Giving Ben credit, huh? I'll let him know. No, I ain't just messing. Ben, I love you. All right. So yeah, Jeremy Fowler reporting. Notice I didn't include Ben, again, pulling his chain. The two sides have resumed communication on his contract and future with the team. And that was the line of, what was it? Sunday? It was Sunday. By the way, shout out to everyone that wished me a happy Father's Day on our Locked On Bengals Insiders Club. Shout out to all the fathers out there that hopefully had a happy Father's Day, including Trey Hendrickson, because I'm sure his Father's Day was a bit better with this news coming out. Maybe talks had started sooner. It seemed inevitable that at some point that the sides would come together and at least have a conversation. But I don't know how far this has gone past that. I don't know how intense this is. It could be so intense that something gets done this week. It wouldn't shock me if that happened. But would it shock me if this went into training camp still? No. Nothing really outside of trading Trey Hendrickson would shock me here. I expect him to be in a Bengals uniform. I just don't know when he's going to be happy and smiling in said uniform. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. I think that's where everybody in Cincinnati or Bengals fans are certainly feeling. I think that's how we feel from a football standpoint and putting their best team on the field. You got to have Trey. So hopefully something gets done soon. And this is just the start of a contract extension for the all-pro pass rusher.
At some point, you're right. This needed to happen. They needed to start talking about the contract again. But as we've been saying, at least in recent times here on this podcast, and as long as we've understood the reality of Trey's situation, he's under contract for this year. And that being his reality, his leverage is extremely limited. He's exercised it to the nth degree. He's done as much as he can in terms of talking to the media, showing up for that voluntary practice a couple of weeks ago and meeting with Cincinnati media, talking to Pat McAfee a couple of times, and Joe Burrow's media campaign before the Super Bowl and throughout the offseason. They, I think, have pulled every lever available to them to make this as big of a deal for Bengals fans, for the national media that's looking for something to talk about, to the point where there's more conversation about Trey Hendrickson than there is about Micah Parsons and TJ Watt, although those stories are picking up steam as the summer goes on as well. The downside to that approach is Trey Hendrickson also just was subjected to fines for training camp or for minicamp, mandatory minicamp. And that was something that he took umbrage to when he was notified that there would be fines on the supposition that that means that they wouldn't have a long-term deal done by the time minicamp arrived, and they didn't. And the ideal thing here is, well, we've ramped up as much as we can from Trey Hendrickson's side. From the Bengals side, it's obviously ideal to have Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart, but Trey Hendrickson back for training camp and there for the beginning of training camp. And we've talked about this. It's more important for Shamar Stewart. Go look at our most recent episode for all of our thoughts on the Shamar Stewart situation and what's going on there. Most recent 2 episodes. I feel like we've talked about that a ton in the last week, but
I think it's 2 out of 3. I think it's 2 out of our last 3.
And before that, it was Trey Hendrickson stealing shows that we weren't planning to dedicate to Trey Hendrickson as a topic. But at least today it's good news. But the ideal here is that the beginning of communication now and the resumption of communication now during this break between minicamp and training camp is with the express goal of actually getting it done by the time training camp starts and avoiding that distraction that Joe Burrow acknowledged was a distraction going into the beginning of training camp.
Yeah, it's going to be such a huge distraction. Let's combine them together. Can you imagine if neither guy signed and Shamar's just standing there and Trey Hendrickson doesn't show up? And I don't think he will. I think that minicamp, the reason why he was like, fine, I'll be fine with fines, is he's going to go that route. I don't think this is going to be the Jamar Chase thing where Trey's just kind of standing out there waiting on a deal. This doesn't feel as nice, at least as of right now. Maybe this communication helps it. I just, now's the time. Like, I get it. You want to play hardball, negotiate, and all of those things. And I do think that that's part of it. And that's fine. I really don't care that he's not signed to this point. I would have liked the communication to be better, but I actually don't. It's not a huge deal. It's not like he's, it's a tragedy that Trey Hendrickson hasn't signed an extension yet. And at the same time, from a Super Bowl standpoint, from a fast start standpoint, Trey Hendrickson not being on the field after a full training camp because of a contract situation when the Bengals play the Browns, that would feel pretty tragic. And that would feel like a failure from a football standpoint. And I just don't want to get to that point. And so when I saw this, I'm like, okay, good. This is the first step. Hopefully there's more steps. And whether it's before July 4th, after July 4th, when everyone's rolling in, I want to ask Mike Brown during Mock Turtle Soup Day, during Media Day, about a Trey Hendrickson extension that's already done. I want to hear from Trey before training camp. And so hopefully that happens. Hopefully we're talking about a signed deal on the dotted line. And what do you think, real quick, I'm putting you on the spot here. What do you think gets it done? Like, what do you think numbers wise would get it done and get Trey to agree? Is it 1 year extension, 2 year extension? I don't think they offer a 3. I know I would probably rule that out at this point, even though that's probably what he wants.
Yeah, I don't think 1 year gets it done. So maybe 2 years is the common ground. Maybe upfront money helps. Maybe some guarantees help. Maybe they try to deal with this default of voiding of future guarantees with Trey as a trade-off for increased guarantees, and they set that precedent for Shamar Stewart. So those things all could come into it. I think the money is probably the biggest issue, because this probably needs to go north of 35 or at least get to 35 million for new money. Just looking at what's happening with other edge rushers around the league, and Danielle Hunter's contract, even though that's a 1 year deal, maybe they get a bit south of that number. Like, that would be the best case, I would think, from a Bengals perspective, is, hey, we're going to give you another year. Hey, we're going to do guarantees, but the money is going to be a touch lower. And I don't think Trey has a huge reason to go for that. On the other side, Trey is looking at $50,000 a day in training camp fines for every day of training camp he misses. That can add up. And those are mandatory fines. And typically when players are fined for missing training camp, the team will work out some way to excuse those fines in the subsequent extension that is reached. You've seen that time and time again around the league. So that's an incentive for the sides to work together and say, hey, if we get this done, we'll find a way to get those fines paid back to you. But those fines are lingering and are mandatory, not something that the team has a choice about, at least to initially levy those fines for training camp.
Yeah, I think 2 years, give him a fat payday this year, get that money up to close to 30 million, maybe 28 million this year, and then 30 plus million, maybe 32 million or so. I get there, Bengals. Get it done. Hopefully they get it done.
The NBA playoffs are winding down, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action, so don't miss out. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. Maybe you'd like to do that. From three-pointers to steals to assists, there are so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Place that first $5 bet on the Thunder, 6.5-point favorites over the Pacers in Game 6 of the NBA Finals. The potential clincher, odds on the over, plus 110, and the under, minus 152. Defense has been a theme for the Thunder all postseason and all regular season. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Jaire Alexander has been a big topic of conversation ever since his release from the Green Bay Packers. And after day one of minicamp for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson sent a clear message to Eric DaCosta on the matter.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
The big storyline of the day is Lamar Jackson's comments about Jaire Alexander, the former Packers cornerback who was released a couple of weeks ago. He's been making headlines. A lot of teams reportedly interested. And Lamar Jackson, he sent a clear message about his thoughts on whether the Ravens should sign him or not. So we'll get into that here as the show starts up. And look, I think it's an important conversation because I don't think there's a non-zero chance that Baltimore signs him. I think that there is a possibility. In Lamar Jackson, after day one of minicamp, he was asked about Jaire Alexander, and his message was very clear, very simple. He took a very firm stance on the matter. He said, quote, "Go get him, Eric. I love all our corners. Don't get me wrong, but go get him, Eric. Yes, I hit him up, but you don't know. You never know with Jaire. That's my boy." this is as glowing of an endorsement as you can give. And like Lamar said, it's not about the Ravens cornerbacks on the roster. In fact, you look at a cornerback room of potentially Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, and Jaire Alexander alongside the other depth that they have there. That is a three-headed monster for the ages. There's a lot of versatility that can be utilized there. Maybe you move Marlon into the slot a little bit more. You can rotate guys in if you need to. I think Jaire would be a slam dunk for the Ravens. Now, there are a couple of different things that you do have to factor in. And again, I think it was really cool that, Lamar took this stance on Jaire. These two go way back. They were college teammates at Louisville. There's the viral clip of when Lamar gets drafted by the Ravens. Jaire is doing a draft interview after getting drafted by the Packers. They were in the same draft class. And Jaire goes, Lamar, more, celebrating for Lamar. Like in the middle of his interview, he hears Lamar's name get called. These two are really close. And as Lamar said there, that's his guy. That's his guy. And there isn't necessarily like a pressing need for the Ravens at cornerback here. I know that if you had to pick a position that the Ravens feel like they could potentially need, it feels like safety with Darius Washington going down and a couple of, injury scares, although they weren't really scares. A little preview of the second part of the show is both Chidobe Awuzie and Bo Braid returned to practice on Tuesday. So that was a great thing. They're good to go now. But, in your secondary, I think it does make sense to add somebody, and you can never have enough corners. That's, a lot of people, Ozzie Newsome's phrase right there. Jaire would be awesome, but the money is a thing. The reason why Jaire is not on Green Bay anymore is because he got injured too often and they didn't want to pay him for being injured. He played in just 7 games in each of the last 2 seasons. And when on the field, when playing, he is incredible. Top 10 cornerback in the league still, in my opinion. I know the public opinion of him maybe has gone down a little bit because of the injuries. And I get it. The best ability you can have is availability. But Jaire still would be an upgrade over just about anybody on that roster at the cornerback position. And that, I think Marlon is a conversation you can have, and that's a whole different conversation. I know there are people on both sides of that. Nate Wiggins has certainly improved himself as well to already be regarded as one of the better corners in this league. But Jaire is super, super talented. Now, Brian McFarland, Ravens salary cap, who we've had on the show, he breaks down everything relating to the salary cap with the Ravens. He put this back out on June 9th when the conversation, this is when around Jaire got cut and the whole situation. Brian said that the Ravens currently have $18 million in cap space, but after taking their future expenses into account, they have around $5 million in effective or usable cap space for signings. And Brian also mentions they do have the extension restructure route that will create additional cap space if used. And he also talked about Rashad Bateman's deal creating maybe around $1 million in additional cap space, and that is factored into that conversation as well. So, look, if it turns into a bidding war for Jaire Alexander, if he truly wants to sign a big 1-year deal somewhere and then try to parlay that into a big one more huge payday 4 or 5 year contract right in his prime, the Ravens probably won't be involved in that. $5 million for 1 year, unless Jaire truly does, if he's prioritizing Super Bowl, wants to take a massive pay cut, then I could see it happening. But, you had Peter Schrager of ESPN. He went on with Pat McAfee and essentially said at the end of the day, Jaire didn't want to take a pay cut. Now, the difference is now he's in a situation where he's obviously going to have to take one. And I kind of relate a little bit back to the Chidobe Awuzie situation with Baltimore, right? He gets cut by Tennessee. Tennessee is still paying him money. So what does he do? He signs a 1-year contract with a contender. He knows that the Ravens can win a Super Bowl, and he is hoping to parlay that into probably a bigger multi-year offer next season, because the Ravens do have an ability. It's honestly an uncanny ability to revitalize careers. We have seen it time and time again. We could go through a ton of examples. We'd be sitting here for like an hour on this show talking about it, of players who were considered washed, didn't have any good ball left in them. The Ravens signed those guys, and all of a sudden it extends their careers. And I'm not saying that Jaire needs a career extender or anything like that. I think he still has football left ahead of him, but it's a similar situation where he can take a 1-year deal at a reduced price. Green Bay and that whole situation is done. He gets his money and he's still able to, if he has a great year, go out and get one more big contract. Because if he goes to a bad situation and doesn't play well, or the team doesn't play well, and he's affected by that, his play is affected by that, that could maybe mess with his money a little bit. And so I think that it makes a lot of sense with Baltimore because, look, it's not like the Ravens need that corner one, as I talked about with Marlon and Nate there. You don't need it. Like, the Ravens will be just fine if they don't sign Jaire Alexander. But he truly feels like, and I talked about this on a show last week, if you want to go check that out, it feels like he is the final piece to the secondary where I'd feel comfortable, even without a safety addition. If it's Jaire, man, I'd be on board with it. So, look, I get the injuries. I get people are shying away from him because of that. And if you are on that boat, if you're in the I don't want Jaire boat because of the injuries, I understand your thought process. And I don't blame you. I do not blame you. But I think that it'll come down to price, right? If this is a bargain deal for Baltimore, it's a no-brainer to me. And the fact that he knows Lamar, he's a competitive guy, he has this endorsement, and Lamar is sending a message here. Remember, Lamar has sent messages before, right? And he has gone to the Ravens and said, hey, I'd like to play with Odell Beckham Jr. or DeAndre Hopkins. The Ravens go out that offseason. They get Odell Beckham Jr. to appease Lamar Jackson, and Lamar signs the extension. And then now DeAndre Hopkins is a member of the Ravens. So when Lamar speaks, this organization listens, right? Lamar has been called a shareholder by Eric Costa and company. The Ravens are very in tune with what Lamar wants, and Lamar is very in tune with what the Ravens want. It is a joint effort. So I do believe, some teams, some organizations, players will say this, and the teams will just be like, haha, funny. Like, yeah, cool. The Ravens, I think, truly value Lamar's opinion. They have made that very clear. So I don't know if that means it amounts to anything. If I had to guess, will Jaire be on the Ravens in 2025? My immediate answer would probably be no. But this is a clear message that Lamar sends here. It literally could not be any clearer. Like, it is absolute crystal clear. Lamar Jackson wants his team to sign one of his guys, one of his friends. And it's not just that. It's a good ball player, an elite ball player when he's on and when he's healthy. So price will play a factor, but Lamar took his stance. Lamar took his stance.